Spectrovision Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall, and I'm a folklore researcher. Hello everybody and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast. I'm Jo Hickey Hall and this time I am joined by Greg, and Greg is a listener, watcher, viewer of the podcast, and who got in touch with me after listening to the interview that I did with Dr. Neil Rushton when he had been having an experience atop Glastonbury tour. And so we've been having conversations about that via email. I'm really delighted to welcome you here today, Greg, because you're an academic in the sciences, and so initially our emails were kind of talking about the way in which that would be difficult for you to actually talk about these sort of phenomena that you've experienced. So yeah, a warm welcome to you.
Oh, thank you, Jo. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it was very interesting to hear what you had to say about your experiences. And we'll get on to the fact that, these experiences started from a really young age. But could you talk a little about what it was that you heard in the podcast that made you feel you wanted to get in contact?
Yeah, well, two things happened. The first was with Dr. Neil Rushton, the experience that he was describing at the time I thought could be related to a Kundalini experience. And yeah, by the grace I've had and still do have many Kundalini experiences. So I thought I'd reach out to Neil and to you because of that, but also because I was doing a little bit of ritual work, which I do. I heard some voices, well, a voice in particular, and it was quite audible. And typically these are voices that are inside, but this one happened to be quite audible outside and in the room I was in, and I could locate kind of the area. And then intuition or a small voice kind of came to me to explain who that voice was from. And it happened to be from like an earth elemental, likely a gnome is what I was told.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know anything about these sorts of things. So of course I was scrambling online to try and figure it out because it concerned me. It was very vocal. And yeah, just sifting through different things online, and I came across your supervisor actually for your master's degree, who I quite like, I admire, and I do respect. And I thought, oh, this is great because if I trust him, then obviously I trust your work. So that's when I reached out.
That's lovely. Yeah, so that's Professor Ronald Hutton, and
That's it.
yeah, I mean, this is exactly why I wanted to come over and study with him, because his work is of such a high caliber. He really kind of understands these worlds and these areas of of interest, particularly kind of in pagan studies. So so yeah, you're right that he's contributed such fantastic work to these areas that we feel like we can trust Professor Hutton, because you yourself, you work for a major university. And so, I think that it's interesting actually because until I started doing this full time, I was also working for, a University of Bristol, a major
mm,
university, and I was kind of still creating the podcast in my spare time, but during my work hours, I would often have conversations with academics who were really interested in what I was doing,
mm,
and they would say to me, "I'd love to do something like this, but I can't because if I did, I would, I certainly wouldn't be promoted."
yeah.
I certainly wouldn't get funding for anything like this. But yeah, the main thing was that in terms of their career, they needed to protect their career.
Mm,
And so it really restricted the areas that they could look at. So
mm,
hearing your experience here, you have a kind of your private life, which is very much involved in, exploring spirituality,
mm,
and I think you mentioned also that you run Zoom groups too, so you can always tell us a little bit about that later too.
mm.
And then, you kind of, on the other hand, you have a public facing academic career.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little about, how that is?
Yeah, it's quite difficult. So I was writing to Dr. Neil Rush, and I said I wear two hats: one as a scientist, and one as a esotericist and spiritualist. And I told him physically, I mimic when I walk into my department, putting my scientific cap on to do my job.
Yeah.
And then when I come home and I start to read my, books or do my other work, I put my esoteric hat on, so to speak. But it's difficult. It's very difficult to balance because I am heavily involved in both research and teaching, and I do have students, and I have to keep it very very quiet, and I do publish quite a few papers as well. So like you said, if these sorts of things get out to the people on the board who send the pots of money your way, for example, because it's so competitive, they just might not come your way if these things are found out. So it's been quite difficult, but I think it's kind of been a trial all my life, really, because I've had experiences. The earliest I can remember was about just over 2.5, maybe 3. I kind of asked my mom for the how old I was, but I'm not too sure. I think under 3, I think.
Mhm.
And they've been continuing with me all my life through high school, university, on and on and on. So I've just been dealing with that, yeah, my whole life. Lots of things happening. So,
Yeah, it's a similar story for many of us. I'd
mm,
really like to ask you about the Kundalini experience for people that,
mm,
that don't
mm,
know too much about that, and
mm,
also
mm,
about the gnome. But I'm really drawn right now to ask you about those early experiences, as it kind of
mm, mm,
sometimes it helps to set a scene of our relationship with otherworld, and it yeah, and how that is for people, because I
mm,
think a lot of
mm,
people watching and listening will be familiar with the sense of this, that these experiences start young and they
mm.
seem to kind of weave through our lives. So
Yeah,
yeah, what
yeah,
kind of experiences were taking place as
yeah. Well, I'd love to share that with you, and I want to say as well, this is the first time that I've really put that out there. I do have some close friends that I've told them various things, mostly if they're in the esoteric sciences, that sort of stuff. But they still kind of jump and are surprised when I tell them. So my first experience, like I said, I was about 2.5 or 3 years old. This shocks everyone, but my crib that I was in levitated, which is absolutely bizarre.
no?
Yeah.
No.
So, but it did. I clearly remember that, and I do remember some experiences, at that age as well. So yeah, that was the first thing that happened. But um, I I was a child who had terrible, terrible nightmares, reoccurring nightmares. I had one reoccurring nightmare that seemed to last forever, but when you're young, you know, short periods of time seem like forever. So I can't say how long it lasted, but yeah, it was very, very, very strong, and it involved me being in a car, and I was I was my age, so extremely young, and I was behind the wheel driving this car, and it was a particular car that my parents owned, and of course I couldn't touch the pedals to make them operate, so I was just holding the steering wheel, and it was just driving so fast down this old dirt road, and I just couldn't stop it, and then people were along the way and they were shouting, "Stop, stop, hit the brake," and I just couldn't hit the brake. And then, of course, I'd wake up. Consequently, about 10 years after that, we were driving down that dirt road that to a friend of my parents' house who had just moved onto that road. And I was looking out and I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, this is the road. This is the road. And of course, my parents just looked at me like I was, being a bit silly and young. But yeah, just strange things like that.
Ooh.
Um, yeah. Another thing is that my house was and probably still is haunted. So that's my parents' home.
Mm. And that's the home you live
So I was
in
raised
now?
in a
Ah, of course.
no, so that was my parents.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So where I lived until I went away from for graduate work, so to do my PhD. I was living with my parents,
Yeah.
and it was yeah, it was quite a home. Let me put it that way. So a lot of things would go missing, and I've got some interesting stories about things going missing. But it got to be such a problem that my parents, who were at the time very hardcore Christian, they said we've got to have a meeting about this because it's getting quite serious. And for my dad to agree to that, and for my mother to raise that topic, I found that quite surprising because that thing was just never spoken about at all, even though these things were happening. Yeah, but one story I can share with you if you'd like. It's quite an interesting one. We've got two homes. One where my dad lives during the week, and the other the family home. And I was at my dad's home helping do some, and my mom was there as well, helping do some repairs to the bathroom, renovations, that sort of stuff. And I had to drive back, which was about an hour and a half drive to get. I had to go to work, so I was I think I was 17, somewhere around there, 16 or 17. Yeah, and I got home and I put my keys on this little couch. We call it a love seat. Just popped it down there. It was right by the door. And I went in and I got dressed into my uniform. I worked at McDonald's at the time. I was very proud. And I came out to grab my keys to go, and the keys were gone. They're just gone. And I knew where I put them down. But, being a young teen, maybe I was a little bit careless. So I started to search the house and I became a little more vocal, just being kind of a smart aleck teen saying, give me my keys back. I need to go, and just being a little bit playful. But then I kind of made the mistake of saying, for some reason, okay, devil, you need to give me these keys back. Because I thought, this is a very nasty trick that was being played on me. And all of a sudden, I heard the rattling of a rattlesnake, like very, very clear. And it frightened me, of course. So I was down on my hands and knees, actually in my parents' room, looking under things to see where was this sound coming from. Then I got even more frightened. I couldn't find it, so I went out, to the main part of the room. And back in the day, we had these little battery-operated fans that
Oh, yeah.
people sometimes carried around, just for fun, sort of thing. And it was actually spinning. And I knew I didn't turn it on. So I just, at that point, I started to get really, really concerned. And all of a sudden the phone rang. I picked up the phone, and it was a family friend who turns out to be a missionary in Africa. And I said, hello, and no word of a lie, Scout's honor. He said, Craig, what's the problem?
Oh,
Which is very, very bizarre.
mm,
And I said, well, I put my keys down. They're gone. I can't find them. I can't get to work. I'm going to get in trouble in work. I heard these noises, this fan's going, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, look, things like this don't typically happen in North America. They don't typically happen. Okay. But in Africa, where I am, this particular area in Africa, we see these sorts of things occur more often. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hang up. I'm going to pray for you. You're going to get your keys and you're going to go to work. And I said, thank you. And I wasn't a heavy Christian or anything, but thank you. Hung up the phone, turned around, keys are right there, right in the center of that love seat. Grabbed them and just shot out the door.
yeah. Wow.
Um, yeah, that's a good one. And then, yeah, quickly, other stories are it's typically heavy breathing, especially behind you, that you can hear, and footsteps in the night. I've had one friend run out of my house in our teenage years and say, "Oh, never coming back." And then, yeah, even in older age, I've
Mm.
had friends say in the middle of the night, "Yeah, someone walked up to my door and was breathing heavily at the door, and then kept on walking." That sort of thing.
Do you know
So yeah,
much
that's
about, sorry, do you know much about the house? Do you know much about the house?
Well, I find it quite interesting. We can't. There's a little bit on the house, but basically, it was a new build in quotations in the '60s, but it was right beside a farmhouse. And what we suspect was it was just a little bit of a burial ground, but that we can't prove that or anything. We don't know for sure. But what I did find interesting is my dad finally admitted that when he was a police officer, so he was a police officer before I was born, and then about a year later, he left the police force and took on a different job. He said that he arrested somebody who claimed they were a witch, and they put a curse on him. So, and then funny things started to happen. So he actually had um, the same person who called me up come and bless the four corners of the house to try and clear up the issue. And yeah, he kept that very quiet. In fact, I didn't know that until maybe 10 years ago, so well after all of this happened. Yeah, he finally admitted that to me because I just started to ask him, can we please now talk about this? Because it's been years. So anyway,
So,
yeah.
yeah, it sounds like he was, genuinely concerned about that.
Mm,
And
mm,
I guess,
mm,
that there's something to be said for that as well, is that, as long as we're believing in it, whether it be good or bad, we open
mm,
ourselves to
mm,
something. If we're open to the idea
mm,
that something might be happening, that's very interesting, isn't it?
mm,
And
mm,
the experience you had as a child in the crib, what can you remember about that? I mean, that must be obviously it's such a vague, feeling of that, but I do speak to a lot of people and I have had experience myself of
mm.
this, of
Ah,
levitating down the stairs. I don't know if you ever,
wow.
yeah, and this is something, I mean, lots of people remember this as a child, as,
Wow.
just maybe
I,
uh
I
half
wonder what
of
it
it.
is.
Mm,
Yeah, I wonder what it is with stairs and levitation. I find that quite intriguing. I have many, many dreams. That's never happened to me, but I have many, many dreams where I'm at the foot of the stairs and I'm being held,
right.
suspended in air.
Mm.
It comes around maybe once or twice, probably once a year. Maybe I have that sort of dream. But yeah, what an interesting, yeah, occurrence for you. Wow. How
Well,
old were you?
so I was between, I know I was no more than four because we left that house
Yeah,
when I was four, and I can
yeah,
vividly remember it. And and
yeah.
it wasn't just once, it would happen as I would sort of go down the
Wow.
stairs, and lots of lots of people that I speak to, quite a number of people have experienced that too. So to hear
Oh, oh,
about the bed levitating,
mm,
or the cot levitating, and
mm.
was that was the memory that you felt it, was there a feeling with it for you?
Yeah. So it's extremely vague, like you said. And all I recall is they had my mom had the crib under a window,
Okay.
uh, and I remember holding the sides, and I remember um, some lights coming under the door, which yeah, I've had a few times after that for a few years after
Yeah.
that. And I recall what I was wearing at the time, and then all of a sudden I could come up and I could see out that window,
Yeah.
and then came back down. And yeah,
Yeah.
I just today I feel it was the whole crib or cot that came up and down, but it could have just been me. At that age, memories are, they're
Yeah.
just beginning to form, kind of. So yeah, it is very vague, but
Mm.
it's it's written on my heart. That's for sure. I've
Yeah.
never forgotten it from that time. Let's say toddlerhood, when I could start to really think
Mhm.
forward. I've always carried that with me. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. For me, also the window featured strongly, and kind of going out of
Mm,
that, and
mm,
going around. Yeah, that's yeah. Thank you very much for sharing that. Do
yeah.
do you remember being aware of kind of presences in the house as a child then?
Yeah. See, I was so a strange story was um, this occurred after my parents bought me my bed. So I moved out of my cot into the bed.
Mm.
I called it my Captain Kangaroo bed for some reason. I don't know why. Um, anyway, I was about 4 when that happened. So I was in my cot till quite an old age, actually. And then 4, I was in this bed. And the strangest thing happened was now I couldn't predict it, but it happened a lot. These hard to talk about this. These two spindly black creatures would appear beside my bed and the wall, and they would pop up almost like puppets,
Mm.
and interact in ways I can't recall, and then drop down.
Yeah.
And it was a bit interesting, but then it was a bit scary sometimes. So, and you just didn't know when they were going to appear or not. So, but it did happen for quite some time after that. So that was yeah, strange thing that occurred with entities. Yeah.
How large were they?
Yeah, they were. I recall them quite well, actually. They would be no taller than a foot
Mhm.
high, maybe,
Mm. Mm.
and extremely spindly. That's all I remember. They were very, very, very thin, like a larger head, and very, very thin and black. But then it was always dark, uh, you know. So
Yes.
I never had a light on or anything. My mom would
Yeah.
always put me to bed and close the door, no lights. That's it. So
Mm.
yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
And the way that they interacted with each other, what was the feeling of that? Was it a friendly interaction or was it something else?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I can to answer that, to be honest, because I was intrigued, but I was also at times afraid. So I didn't really know what was going on.
Mm.
Um, so I would just hide under the blankets, really, to be honest. So most of the time, and you couldn't predict it. You just didn't know if they were going to come or not. So sometimes I would just be a little bit scared. Oh no, they might come tonight, and then other times they would pop up and it didn't matter. I wasn't too bothered. So yeah, it was a whole mixture of emotion. And of course, I'm quite old. I'm getting old now, so this is going back many, many years ago. So of course, memories are all
Mm.
blurred and everything. So
Mm.
yeah.
Wow, that the description of that really reminds me of well, first of all, I'm thinking imps, but and we're using these categories and we just don't know,
Hmm.
there's a whole array of beings, and it feels for us as human beings, we like to kind of categorize. So sometimes it feels helpful to do that.
Hmm.
But I
Hmm.
don't know ultimately how useful that is. But it really reminds me of the episode, The Puppets Are Coming For Me. And I don't know if you've listened to
I
that
have
one yet.
I
Right.
have listened
Okay.
to that one. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that one was very moving. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Because
definitely. So
I really struggled with
I
that.
shall research that further, though. The imps. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
not thought of that, but a lot of strange things happened in my bedroom at that age. Things that I still carry with me. You know, just bizarre, bizarre. So all of a sudden, the darkness of the room would be lit up like a canopy with uh, stars, you know, tons and tons of stars. However, I don't know how many there were, but they would move and pulsate, and there'd be a sound that would come with it as well. It was just absolutely bizarre, and it was almost like an old telephone being left off the hook. I don't know if you remember the old school
Yeah.
telephones,
I'd
and it
say.
would make that weird doot 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 sound, and these things would be pulsing. They'd be pulsing with that, and it's just
Yeah.
absolutely bizarre. But that I was in awe of. And in fact, with the Kundalini work that I've been doing,
Mm.
about as I was just looking at my diaries, I keep quite uh, meticulous notes at times. That those lights finally um, appeared to me one night, and were pulsing with the sound, but not as pronounced as what I heard before. So yeah, but that was something very special that happened a
Amazing.
lot.
Yeah. Could you tell us about Kundalini experiences for people that
Yeah,
may or may not be familiar with
sure.
how that comes about?
Sure, sure. So, with the Kundalini, what happened was that I was going through um, a period where I had separated from uh, my ex-wife now, and it was very, very emotional, very difficult for me. This was back in 2018, and some strange things happened, which we, might want to discuss later. But I decided I was going to start to purify myself. So by meaning, watch my diet, try and eat, whole proper foods, organic if possible, drink lots of water, uh, reduce alcohol consumption and that sort of thing, and really study, um, older books and older manuscripts and that sort of thing.
Wow. Mm.
And that process of purification got me into reading the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And I admired it so much that I started to develop what I thought was my own commentary on the Yoga Sutras. Um, Even though I didn't really understand too much, but I just got into some writing, into some free flow, and just putting my thoughts on paper about what it meant. But that also helped the process of purification, because it does teach the royal way on how to achieve things like this. But I wasn't thinking about really Kundalini at that point. But it got me into breath work because it spoke about pranayama.
Mm.
So I started working with breath, and I had done a fair amount of meditation before that, but not breath work. It was more kind of being blind. I didn't really know, like going into a blind, I didn't know really, anything about the breath work. So, but I started to move the breath inside in a way that felt natural to me, and I brought it up from the base of my spine, and I started to bring it up, and I'd visualize an inner light, which is that breath. It's the ruach, coming up through you, the prana.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought it up into my head, and then I would let it condense, running down the back side of me. Yeah. And I would keep it in a loop going like that. And I probably had some help. I was reading a book by a yogi. He's passed now, called Shelley Trimmer. He worked
Okay.
with a top yogi basically, and he probably wrote about that in one of his chapters, the cycling. So that's where I learned that. Anyway, I started to develop this inner pranayama, watching that light circle around, coming up and then going down my back. And I carried that through for quite some time. Well, I still do it now. But what happened was I had a mini Kundalini experience that I didn't realize was a mini Kundalini experience. I didn't realize that till about a year later.
Mm-hmm.
No, a couple of years later, that's what was happening. Anyway, January 2021, January the 19th, 2021, I'll never forget, starting at 11 p.m. I felt this swirling in the coccyx region, the lower base of my spine, just really turning around. And I'd been doing this pranayama work for a while, and I do it right before, like right in bed as well, before I fall asleep. And I thought, okay, well, I can feel it down where Muladhara chakra, the root chakra, would be. So I'm going to just focus on that root chakra. And all of a sudden, I could see, obviously in my imagination, my third eye, this swirling of, like, it was more than constellations. It would have been like a galaxy swirling or something like that. And then all of a sudden, unbeknownst to me, this white snake, and I hadn't read about any of this, so I didn't have the visuals, but it was this white snake, which, I don't want to be rude, but it had the head of a penis, actually, started to blast off, and there was nothing I could do. And I relate it to watching a rocket take off, and we watch it, and there's so much thrust, but it's moving so slowly,
Mm-hmm.
or it appears to us moving so slowly, trying to break, the gravity of the earth, basically. And that's what it felt like. And I was helpless. I felt great, but I was helpless. I just had to literally sit back and watch the experience. And that white snake started to blast up my central channel, which is my sushumna, and just start to pierce these chakras as it moved up. And it moved up. It felt like it had gotten to my heart chakra, but it didn't seem to go any further than that. But the experience was so intense. What was happening was that a house alarm beside us was going off when this started to happen. So when it started to take off, and it was this house alarm going off, and it set car alarms off outside. And this is a true story. You can't make this up. So I had these alarms were just blasting, going off, and an inner voice then came to me, which is the first time I heard a very, very clear inner voice. It was my voice, but it was very direct and very clear, and it just said, "Continue with the moment." Basically, it said a few other things, but continue with the moment. And I just sat back. I had gone into what I would describe then as the astral, as the snake was moving up, and as these alarms were going off, and I just sat back and I watched it move and pierce these chakras, probably ending in the heart, but that's still a little bit. I'm not sure about that. Yeah, so that was my first experience, and it changed my life completely. I had some life changing incidences before that that were spiritual in nature, but this one, there was no turning back. It was for me the ultimate verification of things going on in different planes, different worlds. and spiritual connectedness to the unity of one, really, to be honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, after that, I pursued this Kundalini, and over the next 2.5 years, I worked with Kundalini to pierce all my chakras and finally head up into my head uh, and to my crown chakra and above. Yeah, it took about 2.5 years to do that. Um, yeah, very intense work. Pretty much every day, twice a day, I'd be working on my breath work. Yeah,
It's really deep work, really deep work.
it
I mean,
was.
it's amazing. And I want to ask, what life was like before and after for you.
Yep, yep, sure. So like I said, I've had some major experiences before the Kundalini, which I can explain very briefly if you'd like.
Sure, yeah. Thanks.
One experience was in 2009. I wrote this to you. Yeah, I found it very interesting. So, because I went back into my journal and had a read of that to see to get the details. This was back when I wrote to you. And what happened was, my wife at the time, she was gone. She was away,
Mhm.
and I was by myself, and I was cleaning the house and tidying the house. And for some reason, I had this kitchen chair in my living room, and I think I was standing on the kitchen chair probably to dust or to put curtains up, or who knows what I was doing with it. But it was in the living room. Anyway, I was upstairs, and I had this calling, this urge to go down the stairs and sit on that chair. And I have never had anything like that. And it wasn't a voice. There wasn't a direct voice that said that. There was nothing negative. It was all positive, but it was just this overwhelming feeling. You've got to go down and sit on that chair. And the chair was facing a window with the curtains closed. It was nighttime, and why I would do that, it was just beyond me. So I did it, and words came into my mind, and I thought of my grandma um, Robinson, who just passed away recently, and she was very esoteric. I was always listening to her stories. I just absolutely loved them. She always talked about auras, and she was a traveler, going different places on cruise liners at the time because he couldn't fly, and she'd be meeting the most amazing yet bizarre people with strange stories. So I always admired her stories, and for some reason, it just came to me this deep connection with my grandmother, and a few other words that came to me as well. And all of a sudden, um, I was just pulled out of my body, and I was pulled straight up. And my consciousness that was being pulled up, I could see myself going through the floor and the roof of my house, and then I could see the roof of my house, and I was pulled higher and higher, and I could start to see where I was living, and then the curvature of the earth. And I thought, oh, this is phenomenal. But then I realized there's someone beside me, and I wanted to interact with that someone that was beside me, and I started to turn to face them, and foosh, I came out of it,
Mm.
like instantly came out of it, sat on my chair, and I thought, no, this is, it cannot end like that. This is for me just something so special and important. Please, don't make it end. Whoosh, pulled straight up again.
Oh,
And this time I was pulled even higher and higher and higher. And I was saying to this person beside me, just, I guess via telepathy, I don't know. I really want to see who you are. And this person said back, and it wasn't my voice, said back, you can't look at me. It'll hurt your eyes. And then I was being pulled even higher past the earth and everything. And it was like blissful. So I let that go for a while. But then I remembered, oh, I want to see this person. So I turned around and started to look, and the bright white light, it was just starting to eat at my eyes, and poosh, boom, right back again on my chair. And that story. So that was 2009, and that really got me into uh, searching sacred texts and things, in particular Buddhism at the time. I sat with the Buddhists a lot after that, and really started to explore spirituality beyond what I thought as a very, very young, well, I was a postdoc at the time,
Mm-hmm.
what I thought spiritualism was, because of course, as an academic, you usually define what that is.
Yeah.
So yeah,
What was that? What was your definition? What was your understanding?
my understanding came later on, much later on, when I was able to have conversations. I know this sounds crazy, but have conversations with what I believe to be my holy guardian angel,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's who it was. And
Mm-hmm.
after I was able to work with the Kundalini energy and draw it up and pierce my throat chakra, which took quite a long time. And I was taught how to do that by somebody not on this earth, which I know sounds bizarre. Then it was explained to me that white light was my holy guardian angel, and I was taught how to. I don't want to use the word invoke, but to have a communication if I wanted, if I needed help or anything, with that entity. And it was very straightforward. I was shocked. It was close your eyes and imagine you're sitting in that kitchen chair in your living room, and that person's behind you. And that's how you can start. You can initiate the conversation. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was very powerful and did work. Yes.
That's so nice. Uh, when you mention the white light, and you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about the white light the presence that you wanted to turn towards that wouldn't allow you, but are you also
Mm.
referring to the white light that you were pulling up within you in the Kundalini?
That's a really, really good question. I'm not sure is the answer to that. So what I'm pulling up in the Kundalini, I just see as the breath of God. So I see as the ruach in Hebrew, or prana, which you can break pranas down into five different pranas. I don't wanna bore anyone with that, but I'm pulling up the apana prana, which is the prana that normally exits a person and is responsible for the lower sexual energies. Um, and then yeah, it comes out onto the dung heap, as it's said in old manuscripts, many, very, very much old manuscripts, when sages are asked, where where you can find spirituality, and they can point to the dung heap and show it, and that's where it is. And that's the energy we're trying to turn around and transmute and bring that up. And we're bringing that up into my view, my belief, what I was taught is into Manipuri, which is the chakra just above the navel, and that's kind of the command center,
Mm.
um, which interacts with all the five pranas and can distribute the energy. And then from there, as it passes through Samana, activating that beautiful fiery spiral, it then moves up with Udana, which is another prana, which normally comes out the mouth. And it comes out the mouth because we, as humans, we say a lot of terrible things. I know I do, and we lose a lot of energy to that, just talking and always putting people down
Yeah.
very quietly. So I was taught, yeah, well, you just take your tongue and you touch the roof of your mouth, or you turn it backwards into a tongue lock, which is what I do,
Mhm.
and that teaches you to have purity of speech, and allows that energy to start to pass up into the head and activate the third eye chakra, and the pineal gland, which I believe controls the crown chakra. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I work with, I really don't know a lot, but I work with these ideas too.
Mm,
So the energy that would uh, come forth from the mouth, would you see that as throat chakra energy, that expressing and receiving, or something else?
Yeah, I do. I do. Indeed, I do. Yeah. Yeah. There's a very, very deep connection with that. So yes, yeah. And the purification of that, it's my third eye, I see it as a beautiful blue fog that tends to swirl and that sort of thing. But yeah, when you make that connection with the tongue, that kind of
Yeah.
purific purifying, and you're putting yourself in the mindset as well that you'll not speak and you'll listen and you'll go inside. So it's pratyahara, it's bringing your senses inside, and that's really what that tongue lock tells me. It's time to bring my senses inside,
Mm.
to find rest,
Yeah.
and that's what allows that udana in me through the throat chakra to rise. Yeah,
I had not considered that
yeah.
before, because in practice, in the gestures that we use, we'd sit cross-legged, have our palms kind of
Mm-hmm,
on our thighs, kind of thing, um,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
have the posture, so that your head is slightly tilted downwards, and the tongue,
mm-hmm,
behind on the your roof of your mouth, behind your
mm-hmm,
teeth at the top, sort of thing. Is
mm-hmm.
that with the tongue?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah, right? And I'd never considered
Yes,
that before, but that
yeah.
sense
So
of
that's the first, like when I teach methods, that's the first step, because it's very painful and very hard to twist your tongue backward to touch your
Mm.
soft palate. And then you can get even crazier if you practice and do Kachari Mudra, which I can't do, which is putting your tongue in your nasal passage. And that
Oh,
goes up as
okay.
you elongate it. It actually touches a part of the skull, which right above it is, well, it's another little nasal passage, but then your pituitary gland, and it's supposed to stimulate the pituitary. But yeah, so when I help people through activation and Kundalini, yeah, it's exactly what you said. You start with the tongue, just touching the roof of your mouth behind your teeth.
Mm.
And that starts the process of going inward and allowing that udana energy then to not just flow out, but to flow up. All the energies as well, but specifically that udana. And that's the prana that I found is the spiritual prana that really, it's like it's attributed to the north, so it's into the unknown, that sort of thing. It's the mystery, you know. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Yeah, thank you for that. I hadn't thought of it that way before. So I'm really with, there's this kind of before and after. There's before, when, you as a scientific,
Mm,
academic, has this idea of what spirituality is. And then there's afterwards, when you have this gnosis, after you have this gnosis, and it's something completely
mm,
different.
mm,
And then,
mm,
you have your kind of life before, and what that
mm,
felt
mm,
like, and then your
mm,
life
mm.
afterwards. Could you talk a little about
Sure.
what those differences were for you?
Well, I
And
would love to. Yeah, I would love to. Thank you. It was tough. So I was raised in a very strict Brethren Christian family and community,
Mm.
and that's the type of Christianity. And I just love the people. There's no, and I have no issue with Brethren today, but that's the where they practice no dancing, hand holding, playing cards, anything like that. It's very, very strict. And it's interesting because most of the people I knew, the adults, they were all very naughty, in their other lives behind the scenes. A lot of it, there was a lot of financial discussions, and that's how they kind of rated how good a person was, because they could talk about finances, but
Mm.
not all the naughty things of life.
Mm.
So yeah, I was brought up in um, this very strict background, and I recall when I was 5 years old, I was with friends. I was with my dad, who was and he had his friends' daughters take me to the shop to get some candy, and I didn't know any better, and I grabbed a little penny candy at the time and just popped it in my mouth, and the two girls that were with me, of course, they told me, no, you can't do that. That's stealing. That's wrong. So I obviously apologized to the storekeeper and paid my penny for it, which and but it got back to my dad. And I remember that night, my dad, and bless his heart, I love my dad so much. He's an amazing person. With his Bible in hand on my bed, he's like, "You've got to take the Lord's, Jesus Christ is your Savior right now. That's just this is it, man. You can't do that." So I did. So I'm a Christian because I did. Um, so I kind of led that life. But one of the issues I always had with Christianity, and I love Christianity. I think Jesus is unbelievable. He's a master for sure. And
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, I would always question. I would always question to the elders and to the deacons who were the highest up in that church. I would ask them about things, and they just didn't like my questions very much. So I get in a bit of trouble. So I was always questioning like that. And then when I was at age 10, which is bizarre again, I knew I was going to have a PhD. I thought it was going to be in physics at the time because I was always doing little experiments at the house and things. And I was, I'm going to have a PhD in physics. I had no clue what that meant, but I was going to have it anyway. So I knew I was on a track for science. And in school and high school, I didn't have to focus. I didn't have to work hard. I was very, very lazy, and I had the most days absence that I possibly could from school before being expelled. I was always sick, in quotations, and that sort of thing. But just by the grace, I could write an okay test, or the teacher would just pass me anyway. So I knew what I had to do to get into university, and I did the bare minimum to get into university. And I went to a local university, and they allowed students who had lower grades to go to their local university. So I could have 10% lower than other people that were coming from a different city. So I knew what I needed. So I just didn't take life seriously, and that was really it. But I grew apart from Christianity at that point, and because there were too many questions for me, and it seemed a little bit too dogmatic at the time. And then as I got into university, I realized that I was good in a particular subject because that wasn't what I was going to major in. But my friend and we had a little study group, just him and I. And then throughout the year, because courses were a full year back then for some of them, we realized that people were showing up and they wanted to study with us. And then they realized that, well, we can help them. We were teaching them. And then we looked at each other one day and said, "Oh, we're really good at this, maybe. So maybe we should major in this." So that's what I did. But in university, any sciences anyway, any creativity outside of thinking, like philosophy, and they didn't even seem to like philosophy too much, but anything like that was just frowned upon. And in fact, that shut me up, and it turned my brain off, to be honest. And I really lost touch for many, many years with the spiritual side of things, except when I went quiet, there was always a calling inside. And I didn't know what that calling was because I only had Christianity at that point. So I thought, oh God, I'm being called to be like a minister or something in the church. I can't do that. Like that'd be wrong. But it was just this persistent nagging, this calling to teach, calling to teach. And but I just kept putting it out of my mind. And then the incident happened in 2009 that I told you, and that's when I started to turn to the text. And what happened was I was postdocing at that point, and I was starting to produce kind of my own papers. My supervisor was still the final author on it, but it was all my work that I came up with the projects and that sort of thing. So I was producing this in the daytime, but on my lunch break, I was hidden away, literally hidden away, sometimes in the loo, reading Buddhist texts and stuff. It was just bizarre. And I would escape from work and take a break, and I would do nature walks. And I wouldn't tell anyone. I would do these nature walks, and I would open up to nature and just try to be creative and expressive with nature, because I felt, without knowing it, there was there was this barring of creativity and expression and spirituality um, in the sciences. And then I had what I call the Great Train Incident of 2016, which, if it's okay, I'll explain that, because it was absolutely life changing. So my ex-wife and I were having terrible trouble in our relationship at the time, and I was on a long train journey back home to see her, and it was very sad. It was really, I don't want you back here, that sort of stuff. It was a difficult time. And I was reading this book on yoga, The Wisdom of Yoga by Stephen Cope. I'll never forget that. And I highly recommend it. Oh, he's a very special man, American chap. And yeah, so I was reading that, and I was just reading the first chapter again. I had read the book a couple times by then, but I was reading that on the train, and I closed my eyes, and this was in September, and I was on the right side of the train where the sun was shining through the trees as the train moved. So as I closed my eyes, you would just see shadow images and brightness appear, kind of on your retina or however it be, as with your eyes closed. And then all of a sudden, these colors started to form a pattern. And I thought, that's bizarre. So I just kept watching intently this pattern on my eyes. And it started to form more and more complex patterns, kind of like uh, like a
Kaleidoscope?
mandala
Oh,
sort of thing. Is
yeah.
that the right word for it? Which I didn't realize at the time. I had no clue what was going on. And then, zonk, something hit me. I have no clue what. There was no imagery. It was like darkness, but not, it was beautiful light, but it was darkness. I don't know if you can explain it any better than that. And it was just this blast of love. I mean, blast and blast of oneness. And that was the real time that I realized that we're all one, that the universe is this living, breathing, beautiful, growing organism. And just like our body, where everything's all interconnected,
Yeah.
the universe is just so interconnected. And I hit this bliss state. And this bliss state lasted for pretty much 1 week. And it was just, I can't explain it. It was the best way that I can explain it. And I don't like to say stuff like this, but I was reading Eckhart Tolle's book much later on, a couple of years later, and he described an experience that he had, and his lasted 5 months. And Eckhart's, wow, he's very special. So I'm not trying to compare anything there, but I had that experience that lasted about a week. And I remember getting off the train with this bliss state that I'd never felt before. And my eyes, everything was just sparkling, and sounds were just so beautiful. It was like just this beautiful harmony all coming together. And I was walking, and all of a sudden this voice comes to me. And it's very clear, and it's my voice, but it's very clear and directive. And it says, "You're going to meet two people at the top of the hill. I need you to give them money." And I was in this bliss state, so I thought, all right, whatever you're talking about, I'm making stuff up now, because I couldn't see the top of the hill. And where I am, there's never any. It's an area where you don't get many strangers. In fact, I had never seen strangers up on the top of that hill.
Mm.
So I got to the top, and lo and behold, two people, a man and a woman, that came to me and they said, can you spare some money?" And I said, "Well, I haven't got any money on me." And they said, "Well, we need to have a place to stay." And I said, "Yep, no problem. Come down the hill." So we all walked down the hill together to the cash point, which was in the city center there, got them some cash, and then was on my way. The next day, I'm out walking my dog, and I'm walking on this path that I'd never been on before. Never. Goats on her. And I came up to this Y intersection, and the voice came again and said, "You need to go to the left. You need to help someone." And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do that because this is very intriguing now. And I walked along this path, and it led to a walled garden. And in this walled garden, there was some older gentlemen. They were well retired, probably about their 70s, perhaps their 80s, somewhere in there. And they had this massive canvas tent. The one that has a really big pole in the center, they used a wooden pole, like a tree pole. It wasn't as huge as a tree, but it was still a tree branch going all the way up to raise it. And it had fallen down the night before um, in the wind, I guess. And they were beside themselves. They said, "We've got a concert tomorrow, and this massive tent, this canvas tent, which weighed a ton, has come down, and we're in big trouble." And it was a Saturday, so they couldn't get anyone out, company out to help them or anything. I said, "I don't know what we're going to do." And I said, "Well, I know what we're going to do. We're going to raise this tent." So over about maybe an hour, I don't know, or an hour and a half, we got that massive tent raised. And he turned around and he said, "Thank you. Why don't you come to this concert tomorrow?" I thought, okay, I'll come to the concert tomorrow. So next day I went to that concert. It was a concert in the garden. It was beautiful.
Mm.
And I was in line. They had a Prosecco line. And I thought, this is back when I drank alcohol. And I thought, I'll get a nice glass of Prosecco. It was sunny and it was jazz music, which is my favorite. And I was in the queue, and there were two ladies ahead of me, and they were talking about this mysterious stranger that appeared yesterday that helped raise the tent. And I was giggling. And of course, being in science at the time, I had a swollen head because I hadn't learned humility, right? Which is a lesson that I'm still learning. But so I said, "That stranger was me." And I turned around. They're like, "Oh my goodness," giving me a hug. And then, "I'm going to buy you the Prosecco and all this." So yeah, but they were talking about this mysterious stranger that appeared. Um, so yeah, that's what happened in that kind of 1 week bliss period. And it was
Yeah.
bizarre because I'd wake up and think, am I going to feel bliss today? And whoop, well, there it is. And it was just phenomenal. So that's what changed me. That was, yeah. So I said 2016, but it was actually September 2015. So I got that wrong.
Yeah.
And that's what led um, to everything. That was it. That was the final, I believe now, that was the final straw,
Mm.
talking through this now. And then, of course, my marriage fell apart. And then in 2018, everything happened with the Kundalini slowly, 2021 being the big incident. So, yeah.
Amazing.
So, yeah, I'm just a different person. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had to learn humility, like I said,
Yeah.
because we don't get paid much in academia. So the only thing we really have is our swollen heads, to be honest. How good we are and how much money we can bring in or whatever it may be. So I had to learn to tone that down.
This section is available for all members of the Curious Crew who support me on Patreon. Join us there for this and more bonus content. Patreon.com/The Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this discussion. And I realise I still haven't asked you about that gnome. See,
Oh, would you like me to share
I
that
would
story?
love, I would love that,
Okay.
please.
Okay. Yeah, it's quite an interesting one. I'd never experienced anything like this. So I do some ritual work, and I work with the four sacred medicines. So that's cedar, sage, tobacco, and sweetgrass. And I also work with cacao, which is a very powerful medicine in my viewpoint. Um, I
Yes.
do a lot of cacao work actually, once a week at least, and it really gets my mind into harmony or something. I don't know what it is, but it's wonderful. So I was doing this work, and I was doing it on the new moon. But when I'm working with these sacred medicines, I'm smudging, and I use feathers to do the smudging. And I use a set of three feathers to smudge with. Huh? So things come in threes for me. So I had eagle feathers, and I wanted to collect some other feathers. So this was a few months before this ritual, and my partner and I, we were taking a wonderful walk in the countryside, and there was this pheasant that just got smushed by a car. It was, it was just, oh, it was terrible. I felt for him. And I walked by and I thought, what beautiful feathers though you had. You must have just been the most beautiful, beautiful pheasant. They were just gorgeous feathers, which was a bizarre thing to say when you've got blood and guts everywhere. It was horrible. And 25 paces ahead, maybe, or something, was this pheasant feather that would have come from the one that was dead, lying perfectly on the footpath. So I picked that up and I took it home, and that became my second feather for the smudging ritual. And the third one was this. A few days later, this pigeon feather that was perfectly on my top step of my to the door. I just came home from work one night, and there it was, and it was in pristine condition. So anyway, there's my third feather. So I take these feathers, these wild feathers, and I wrap them in foil and I quarantine them for a couple of weeks just in case, there's lice or anything like that. Who knows? So that's what I do. And I tie them with a little bit of red string, and there you go. And then I can smudge with them. But for this particular ritual that I was about to do for the new moon, I wanted to collect even newer feathers. And just to speed the story up, I had another pheasant feather that I had found in a bizarre location where I harvest cedar for the ritual. So I collected that. And then one day I was in my kitchen just having a cup of tea in the morning, and the birds were just, they were tweeting very loud, and I just had found this love for birds and wildlife. Like, I mean, I can't explain it. Just this pouring out of love, and in that love, I just thought, oh, I just love to see you even closer. Is there any chance you can come to the window? And there were just these little sparrows, right? And all of a sudden, I don't know how many. I don't want to inflate the story, but there was maybe 8 or 10 of them. They started to move towards the window, and then they came right up to the window, all chaotically tweeting and that sort of stuff. And I just thanked them. Oh, that was beautiful. And then about 2 minutes later, my partner, who was upstairs, screamed. And I ran up to see what the problem was. And one of those sparrows actually flew into the bedroom window, and then luckily flew out unharmed out the window beside it. So everything was safe. No one got injured in that scene. But that kind of got my mind going. Oh gosh, with this love pouring out, you can interact with wildlife, and this is new. And remember, I'm in science, so that no such thing exists. Come on. So that was playing on my mind. And then, gosh, maybe a day later, I was in having another cup of tea. So that would happen on the Saturday. So on Sunday, I was having another cup of tea in the morning, and a voice came to me, and it was my voice, and it was my intuition that said, "I want you to look over to the bush in the back garden. Left-hand side, there's going to be a pigeon feather, and that's going to be used for your smudging ceremony." And looked over, went to the window, looked over, and sure enough, there was a pristine pigeon feather. So I thought, all right, wood pigeon feather. So I thought, okay, I'll go out and I'll use that. Thank you. And I thanked the pigeon that would have left it there and that sort of stuff. And it was a single feather. And I have been over this in my mind 100 times. Let me tell you, it has really disturbed me. So it was a single feather, and I put that in another foil wrap and wrapped it, quarantined it for 2 weeks. And here's the thing: the night before the ritual, the new moon ritual, I was preparing my room, just getting all my implements together to perform it. And I thought, what a shame that I've only got 2 feathers to use in this new moon ritual. I don't have a third. Okay, so I had 3 that I could use as backup, but I wanted to have a new set of 3, and I only had 2. I thought, oh, this is, it's just a shame. I'm not going to be able to use them. But that's okay. But I unwrapped the foil anyway, and I promise you, I'm not mad. There in the foil were superimposed absolutely identical pigeon feathers, one on top of the other. And I know I only put one in, and there were two there. And I couldn't believe it. Nothing like that has ever happened to me like that. And could it be coincidence? Could I have been sleepy and there was two feathers originally and I didn't recognize it? Maybe. I don't know. But you get two quills, like you can tell there's two
Yeah.
feathers, and I'm sure there's only one. I've been over this 100 times in my mind. I've written about it extensively as well. So of course, I thank the pigeons for that, and I have my three feathers for this new moon ritual. So fast forward to the new moon ritual. I do believe it started around 4:30 in the morning or something silly like that, but I got up and did it anyway. And it happened to be was the moon in no the sun was in Cancer at the time. I can't remember where the moon was. Anyway, it's important to me because my birthday, I'm a Cancer.
Okay.
So I thought there's going to be an extra little blast there. So I was doing my ritual, and then I did my meditation. And I don't do pranayama work or breath work on a new moon, just because some say it can be a little bit too dangerous. And that's when I started to hear the voice. And with the Kundalini work that I've done, I hear voices all the time when that Kundalini activates. And I went back to check on this, at least the heart chakra for me. And then if it moves up further and pierces that, that's when it activates, or I can hear these voices. And these voices could be one person, they could be many person. I've got it here. I wrote it down because I was shocked. I one night had about, I just estimated, 300, 400 voices coming at me. And I sort of tried to understand what that was all about and how that happened. Anyway, that was all internal. But this one was the first time it was an external voice. And I was certain about that. And remember, I hadn't done the pranayama work. I hadn't activated the Kundalini or anything like that. And there it was. It was in the corner of the room. And it was speaking in a language that to this day I can't recognize. It was semi-muffled, but occasionally I could hear it come through that muffle. And it was slightly slowed down. It was a slower pace than the way we're talking now, for example. I had no clue what it was saying. But then intuition or a voice came to me to say that this is the elemental, the earth elemental, and I had no clue what this was all, what the voice was on about, that left you that extra feather that you harvested. And then my mind said it may be a gnome. Yeah, and that's what it said anyway. So, but I was frightened, and it takes a lot to get me frightened these days. But you can get frightened in this type of work. So I did my closing prayer and stuff like that just to close the session, because it was just such a direct voice from there, and it was talking about that feather and everything else. It was just too much for me to handle. But at that point, like I said, I scrambled to understand this, because I had never come across a gnome, that type of idea. It was always my training that I've had. It's always just elementals, we talked about, but not gnomes, or you spoke about imps, which it could have been, in my childhood, that sort of stuff. And that's when I came across Professor Hutton, who I thoroughly trust and enjoy. Obviously, all the work he's done in his documentaries and stuff. And that's when your name came up, and I watched or listened to your podcasts, and well, here we are.
Wow. Well, that it feels such a beautiful story to end on. We've kind of come full circle. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I think, even when we don't know and can't quite put a finger on what it is we're experiencing, I think we can trust what I would call our impressions. Whatever your impression of something is feels important, for that person. And if I'm getting better at journaling, but historically been really rubbish at journaling, and I really wish that I had made more notes about dreams and experiences I'd had, because
Hmm.
then you start to kind of trust your impressions and intuitions about things, and it sounds like you're really on a on a rail on a road with that, which is
Yeah.
so it's been lovely, really, really great to speak to you and hear how this has been for you. Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm as I say, I'm very struck with the befores and afters and how this
Hmm.
continues to develop. So you have to come back and you know, let us know how things develop further for you. You mentioned
Yeah. Thank
that
you.
you do Zoom groups. Is that something that other people?
I I do Zoom groups. I do various um, group work. Some of it is initiated group work that I can't talk about. But I do also, I've been instructed and I'm allowed to teach these methods as well. So I do work with, um, I do work with people. In fact, I've never said this before, as I keep it very quiet, but I do have, shocking, but I do have students who I work with as well.
Great.
And you know, it's it's free work. The work that I do, there's no cost. It's to help people on the path and help myself on the path as well, as I learn how to be a better teacher and really how to yoke with the creator, to be honest. Um, but yes, so I do some initiated work, and then I do some teaching with students, and then I also do some instruction for curious seekers.
Wow.
And if you're happy, I can share my email
Yes,
address if
please.
anyone's curious.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's my next
So my email address, it's one word. It's I am holistic spirit
one.
at gmail.com.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Cool. I will flash that up on screen for people, and I will
Sure.
place that link in the show notes as well.
Mm.
But yeah, thank you so much, Greg. It's been absolutely wonderful to speak to you and exchange, all these ideas and experiences, and yeah, to meet and chat with, a fellow comrade on the road, learning and experiencing all of the beauty and the bliss that is there in life, and that I feel like we're moving towards. I do say this all the time. I feel like we are moving towards that as a kind of baseline normality, maybe not in
Mm.
our generation, but certainly for the future generations. I really hope that this is something that is just a normality. But I definitely feel we're heading that way. So,
Oh, yeah, yeah, myself as well. And it really is this, age of Aquarius idea, isn't it? So,
yeah,
my viewpoint it is anyway.
yeah,
People are opening up, and it's tough because there's just so much on the internet that, even with YouTube, I don't watch very much anymore on YouTube because it's just all it's been infiltrated with a lot of rubbish. So it's hard to discriminate,
mm,
because we have so much communication and technology now coming at us.
mm,
But the upside to that is there's so many people now who are
yeah,
just they're going inside, they're looking inside, and they're wanting to explore. And that's why, one of the many reasons why your podcast is absolutely brilliant,
oh,
absolutely brilliant.
thank you.
I really, really enjoy it. It's just such an amazing view from a different angle.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from it, so much. So thank you, and thank you. I'm absolutely honored to have had a chance to speak with you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, likewise, and for giving your time and for sharing your stories so generously and openly and in an open-hearted way. And, and I realize how, that's hard coming from, the environment that you've been in. So I congratulate you. Even that, it feels like this kind of breaking through from that old world into something new. So I'm excited for you too, and all that this will bring. And if there are people watching and listening that are in that place still where they're really questioning whether all of this is possible, and potentially, in a role that requires them to take the perspective that this is just all silly nonsense. Do you have anything you would like to say or speak to that at all, to aid people in that
Yeah,
vision?
yeah. What my advice is, it's through something called pratyahara, but you don't need to follow that anyway. It's just turning the senses inward and listening to that still small voice inside, because we all have that beautiful, beautiful still small voice. And when we can quiet things down and hear it, then we hear the truth. And that helps us, that gives us the sort of discrimination that allows us to cut through all these, false leads, or all the, if you're an academic, all the stuff that goes on with that, or the computer scientist professor that was telling you you're hallucinating. I've got a very, very close friend who's the head of the psychology department in a different university, and he tells me I'm crazy. Um, so, to go all, well, he doesn't say I'm crazy, but yeah, he tries to explain it with other models.
Yeah.
Um, so, but I think it's that sort of discrimination, and really that comes with linking up to that still small voice inside, because that's what gives you, in my opinion, that discrimination, and it's the most powerful tool. It changes your life. It really does. It just starts to cut the weeds out, from the garden or along the path, or any analogy that you want.
Mm.
It's amazing. So I just recommend to anyone listening, if you have that passion, if you've heard that voice, even for a split second, because it's not always there, it's only by the grace, in my opinion, that voice, you can hear it. But when you do hear it, if you listen, it's a life changer, and you start to build these tools. And also, for listeners, I found from my experience, it's exponential. It really is. So what seems like a slow road and a slog, all of a sudden, boom, as you're starting to, learn more, and to purify yourself, which comes naturally with this type of work, you start to cut out things that might be toxic, which could be food sources, sound sources, media, you name it, these toxicities. Really, things start to take off.
Mm.
And with the Kundalini work, with 1 year investment of really honestly in my heart wanting to approach that, 1 year, really, just to be dead honest, it was 1 year of really, really dedicated work. I know it started in 2018, but, it was 2020 to 2021,
Mm.
then you can ride the rocket. And again, it's not me doing it. It's something higher doing it. I'm just, it's just by the grace, is what I say, that occurred.
Mm.
So I truly believe that anybody that wants to walk this path, if their heart is really into it, and honestly they want to work hard, you can walk this path. Patanjali says it's going to happen, at a slow, medium, or fast pace, and it depends on the work you put into it.
Okay.
So yeah, yeah. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Okay. Well, yeah,
Thank
come back and
you.
have a chat again, and all the best with
Oh, be an honor. Thank you.
that you have planned there. And I'd like to hop into some of your groups and learn a bit myself. I haven't worked with Kundalini personally, but I have spoken to people that have, and that have had incredible. Even actually, these people had not done anything like what we're talking about before ever, and had gone to a class, and they'd had this incredible experience. So yeah, it can just happen.
Well, you're always welcome.
Thank you.
All
I'll
right.
speak again, and have a great day. Thanks, Greg.
Same to you. Thanks so much, Joe.
Bye.
Lovely meeting you as well.
Thanks so much for listening and watching. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider joining us on Patreon for dozens more episodes of unreleased bonus content, monthly online events, and a private chat. We are a warm, supportive community, and it really helps to support the project. Find us on patreon.com/the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast.